Hello everyone, welcome back to F1 This Week, where I cover everything that's happened or going to happen in F1 this week. So first off, let's have a quick chat about the Bahrain Grand Prix. Of course, the main talking point is Verstappen winning again. It's going to happen a lot this season, I promise you. However, I don't actually think it's as bad as everyone is saying. A lot of people are writing off the season already. However, I might be being a bit of an optimist here. Leclerc had issues with his car, and in quali it did look like without those issues, he could have been up there with the Red Bulls, potentially, as he did set a faster lap than Verstappen actually in Q2. Sadly, it didn't count, obviously, because it wasn't in the final part of qualifying. Don't write off the season yet. It's early days. Anything could happen in Saudi Arabia. We've got to have a look at Haas. Oh my God, they actually surprised everyone. Hülkenberg sadly had a crash at the start of the race with Stroll. Entirely Hülkenberg's fault, I will say. However, Haas looked very good for once, which is very exciting. Definitely looks like Alpine are the worst. Haas could be in there with the midfield battle of VCARB, Sauber, Williams, and now apparently Haas. Keep an eye on them. And then I think the last thing we learned about the season going forward from Bahrain was that VCARB weren't as good as we thought they were. We thought they'd be neck and neck with Aston Martin, maybe a little bit slower. However, even on qualifying, they didn't really seem to get it up to Aston Martin's standard, because Aston Martin really are the cutoff for the midfield battle. I don't really know where Aston Martin are. They're sort of no man's land at the minute. And VCARB definitely still are closer, I'd say, to the Haas's, the Saubers, the Williams. Maybe not Alpine. That's because Alpine are in a race of their own. However, sadly for them, it's at the other end of the grid. And then overall, the Bahrain Grand Prix was okay. It wasn't one to remember, really. Nothing amazing happened in it. But also, it wasn't the most boring race in the world. We did have a few good fights going on from 2nd to 5th. And then that battle right at the end with Ricciardo, Tsunoda, Magnussen, technically Zhou, I guess, was a great battle as well. So now let's move on to the rumours that have been swirling around F1 this week. Now, the big one, I think, which trumps every other rumour going around so far, is obviously, if you haven't heard, the Verstappen to Mercedes rumours. Now, I'm going to squash this rumour right away. There is absolutely no chance Verstappen goes to Mercedes. A lot of people are comparing this to how we said Hamilton wouldn't go to Ferrari. However, the difference between Hamilton going to Ferrari is that Mercedes aren't at the top of their game. Hamilton's at the end of his career, and he wants to be a part of the most historic F1 team, which a lot of people dream about driving for. If Verstappen went to Mercedes, he'd be taking a drop, first of all, from what he's known. And it would just be way too much of a risk going into 2025, where we know there's no reg changes yet. So Red Bull will be probably at the top again for 2025. So although it sounds interesting saying, oh, Verstappen in a Mercedes, it's not going to happen. However, I will go over all the factors that could make it happen. And you're going to quickly realise that a lot of things need to happen for this to take place. And that's why it's almost a 0% chance it's going to happen. So the first one, which sort of is happening at the minute, is Jos Verstappen, who is Verstappen's dad, also an ex-F1 race driver, is falling out with Christian Horner. Apparently everything going on with Christian Horner at the minute, Jos Verstappen isn't very happy. And then on top of this, I think Horner would need to be sacked for this to go any further with Verstappen. The Ford deal, which is another rumour going around, that could be falling apart with Red Bull, and that actually has to get broken down, which again is a lot to ask. Also, Adrian Newey has to leave Red Bull, I believe, for Verstappen to want to leave. Now, again, another rumour is that Adrian Newey has been contacted by Ferrari with an 100 million contract deal. Again, though, it's just a rumour. I doubt there's actually any talks going on. And then, most importantly, in all of this, if Max Verstappen himself wants to take that risk to go to Mercedes. And let's get real, I don't think he would want to. And those are all the things that have to take place realistically for Verstappen to make that big move to Mercedes. And it's just not going to happen. And just before I go and have a look at the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix happening this weekend, news-wise, the only thing really going on is that the FIA president, Mohammed Ben Sulayem, is under investigation for getting involved with decisions that took place last year in the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. If you all remember, Fernando Alonso had a penalty and then it got taken away. And apparently he was intervening quite a bit. However, there's not much to talk about at the minute on that news, so I'll leave that for now, and maybe next week we'll have more to talk about. Now, heading into Saudi Arabia, I am very excited for this race. It's become one of my favorites of the season, purely because I believe we haven't had a bad race there yet. In 2021, we of course had Verstappen versus Hamilton, that massive showdown before Abu Dhabi, where they left on equal points. If you remember correctly, that was crazy. That fight, one of the most insane things we've seen in F1 for the last few years. In 2022, we had a good fight again with Verstappen and Leclerc, which again, everyone thought would be the first of a few exciting battles between Verstappen and Leclerc. Of course, it didn't really happen. After a few races, Verstappen sort of ran away with it. And again in 2023, you had the whole Fernando Alonso drama, getting multiple penalties, one for stopping on the grid wrong, and then he didn't actually serve that penalty properly. I'm pretty sure they actually put Ocon in that Aston Martin for that race. But of course, we also had Perez winning that race. Now, Verstappen had issues. However, Perez winning a race in 2023 sounds crazy, especially when at that point we thought, okay, maybe Verstappen and Perez will be a little bit closer this season. How wrong we were. But anyway, I think the standout drive coming into Saudi Arabia, I think it's going to be Charles Leclerc. He's got a lot to prove this weekend, considering Carlos Sainz did better than him in Bahrain. Now, he had issues, and that's a lot of the problem. And I do believe if Leclerc does not have issues again this weekend, he can be putting it to at least one of the Red Bulls, most likely Perez. However, it's still going to be quite difficult. But I think he's going to get a podium this weekend, and I think he'll really show everyone why Ferrari's keeping Leclerc. Again, I think worst driver, I've kind of got two, but I think Ocon will do a little bit worse than Gasly. But realistically, it's both Alpines. They qualified 19th and 20th in Bahrain. However, it looks like they had a better race, I guess. I mean, still bad. I mean, 18th and 17th is not nothing to be writing home about. However, it's because Sargent and Bottas both had issues in the race. So it's going to be scary for them, I think, this race. I mean, that's even if they turn up. They might not even have any workers to get them to Saudi Arabia at this point. And then to finish off the video, I'll give my top 5 prediction for Saudi Arabia, which of course Max Verstappen will win the race, I fully believe. Perez, second place. I just don't think he's got it in him to challenge Verstappen again this year, unless Verstappen has another potential issue. And then Leclerc, third place. And I think another thing is that Perez and Leclerc will be fighting for most of the race, so that will stop them from catching up to Verstappen. And then Carlos Sainz, I think he'll have a respectable fourth. However, it's not going to be an amazing race for him. And then Lewis Hamilton, again in that Mercedes, I think he will beat Russell this time round. And I think fifth for that Mercedes is the best that they're going to get. Now, thank you all so much for watching. Comment down below if I've missed anything out that's happened this week in F1. And I'll see you all later this week for another F1 related video or an F1 fantasy related video. Have a good rest of your week. Bye bye.